Hi, today I want to talk about a concept that's often talked about in free software, which is free as in free beer, and then often free as in free speech. I want to talk about a freedom that is very often not discussed, which is free as in free time. Let's go over the first two. When people discuss Linux and Unix and open source software in general, they often use the terms free as in free beer and free as in free speech, and they discuss why these are important and the differences between them. When you say that, let's say, Debian Linux or Ubuntu or Gentoo are free as in free beer, what they're saying is that the software itself has no cost to you. So if I give you a free beer, I'm saying here, you're not paying, but you're getting this beer. All it costs for me to get Debian is pretty much the cost of my internet connection and the cost of the USB stick that I use to put it on. The software itself can actually be retrieved at no cost to me, and it is free and legal to do this. That is free as in free beer. Then there is free as in free speech, which you're going to hear a lot of people like Richard Stallman talk about. They talk about free as in free speech and why this is very, very important, which means that I'm going to get some of this wrong because I don't know all the licensing, so please don't kill me. I don't claim to be a licensing expert when it comes to software. I'm just trying to get a basic idea across here. When they say free as in free speech, they mean, let's say there's something about OpenOffice that you don't like. You can actually view the source code of the software. You can see how it works. You can add to it, modify it, change it so it works well for your organization, and then you can redistribute that software, modify it however you like to other people, which is pretty cool. This is called free as in free speech. There's a third type of freedom here, which I call free as in free time, which I'd like to get to. Now, before I get to what I mean as in free time, I'm an avid Linux user. I've been using Linux since about 2002. I actually paid for SuSE Linux at Best Buy, about $80. You all can laugh. I'm going to put a picture of it here when I get home and have a chance to take a picture of it. I paid for Linux. In a world where most people in my generation are pirating and torrenting and not even paying for the operating system they're supposed to pay for, I paid $80 for the operating system that was legally free. It's because I actually wanted the support. I wanted the manuals. I wanted the manuals in the box that were made by people whose job it was to write manuals who would get fired if they didn't do their job. Since I was jumping into something new, I didn't want to have to deal with forums and all this other junk to be able to find certain pieces of information. Even though that is very helpful, I wanted to have a definitive guide written by the people who set this shit up so that if something isn't worked the way I want, I could actually read the manual. And this was very, very helpful to me. And there are a lot of features about Linux that existed in 2002 that still don't exist in 2015 in operating systems like OS X or Windows. One of my personal favorites in XFCE and many different desktop environments, you can see I have a total mess on the screen here. What I can do is I can just go here and go boop, and I'm on another desktop. So I can have different desktops with different messes. So I can have my desktop for video editing. I can have my desktop with schematics and board views. I can have the desktop, a separate desktop for the schematic and the board view of the board I'm working on and the board that I'm trying to steal a component off of so I can switch back and forth really quickly. Then I can have an extra desktop for the window where I reply to YouTube comments and I'm talking to people. It's very, very useful. Now, there are a lot of things that I like about Linux. I like the fact that when my computer itself ran much, much faster than it did when it was running Windows. Because again, at the time in 2001, 2002, Windows wasn't really. Windows was it was getting raped by almost everything, and it was and at the time resources were much more limited than they are now. So right now, having 16 gigabytes of RAM in this computer, it ain't nothing. And you have solid state drives and fast processors. I had like 128 megabytes of RAM and a drive that spun. It was bad. It was sad times. So having something that was a little bit lighter on the resources was really cool. And I still use Linux to this day. I use it for making these videos, and I use it on my personal machine. But even though I enjoy the operating system, I am not an evangelist. I am not a fanboy, and I want to talk about this for a second. Being a fanboy or an evangelist is when you take your priorities and you tell everybody else why that needs to be their priority as well. So if somebody says, I value freedom as in free speech, and they say, if you don't use free software, you don't value your freedom, what they're saying is that their definition of freedom is more important than my definition of freedom. So let's talk a little about some of the downsides of Linux. Let's not think about 2015 where you boot up off your little Ubuntu flash drive and everything works. Let's take it back to 2003 or 2004 when if you had a laptop that you wanted to use Linux on and you had Wi-Fi on your laptop, that you were going to spend about 24 hours fucking around with it to figure out how to make Wi-Fi work. This is what I talk about when I say free as in free time. I'm going to set aside a day to figure out how to make Wi-Fi work on my laptop with open source software, or I can use the closed source software that doesn't value my freedom, but that allows me the free time to be able to spend with my family. The free time to spend 3 hours with my girlfriend watching a movie. The free time to help a kid with their homework. The free time to help build my business or advertise at work or solve other problems in my life besides Wi-Fi. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about freedom. And this video is really meant and really targeted to those evangelists out there and those fanboys out there that will say things like, you're an idiot if you use this operating system. People use Windows and Mac because they're easy, they're idiots, they're sheep, whatever. And what they don't look at is that there are other people out there that have other priorities in their life. So for me, figuring out how to set up SCSI emulation so that I could burn CDs on my laptop, that was okay for me if it meant that I could have the features that I wanted, and I can have the desktop environment that I wanted, and that I could not deal with viruses and all the other crap that I was dealing with before. That was worth it. But there are also people out there that don't want to Google how to make SCSI emulation work just so that they can rip or burn a CD. And I understand that. There are people out there that don't want to spend 5 or 10 hours fucking around to get their Wi-Fi to work just so that, they can use a free operating system. Because you have to think about it. The term that gets used here often is that the people who use closed source software do not value their freedom. And what I have to say in rebuttal to that is that, what type of freedom are you talking about? So if you're going to differ between free speech and free beer, if you're going to differ between freedom to redistribute and read source code and freedom as in free, as in it doesn't cost anything, I'm going to talk to you about time, because time, again, that's something that you don't get back. The time that I spend screwing around trying to get my video drivers and my video editing set up to work, the time that I spend when this thing is taking 2 or 3 hours to render a video because certain effects will only, in 2015, still only work on 1 core on a 6-core computer, that's time I could spend doing other videos. But I can't do that because the video encode can screw up the recording process, so I can do less videos. My freedom to be able to create content for you is stifled by the free software. And that's another thing that I want to get into. Again, I like Linux. I'm an avid Linux user on my laptop, but for my video editing machine, I'm going to be switching back to using Windows. Not because, and it's not about being a fanboy, because I want to use what works for certain applications. So let's talk a little bit about using Linux as a video editing platform and some of the things I found out. I was very happy to realize that with Linux, capturing separate video sources is very simple. I looked and was willing to spend money on Windows for software that allowed me to capture the screen, an HDMI input from the camera, and an HDMI input from the microscope camera all at the same time. And what I found, the only software I could find that did this simply with a GUI was about $1,200 It was very unstable, and the support sucked. Whereas in Linux, I could use VLC and GNU Parallel to use 3 VLC instances at once that all start at the same time to capture everything. The importance of this is I don't want to fuck around and say, okay, start this file at this time and have it all sync up. I don't want for my description to be out of sync with the recording of the microscope camera, out of sync with the screen capture. I wanted it to all start and end at the same time. Linux allowed this, and it was very cool. But then we got to the actual video editing part. Let me show you some of the things that suck about video on Linux. So if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you have nothing to worry about because you have VDPAU, which is excellent video accelerated playback. Let's say you have an AMD card. I have an R9 280X in this machine. At the time, it was a $300 graphics card. It's about 1 year old, so it's still fairly new. Let me show you what happens if I decide that I want to play back using VAAPI acceleration, which is default in Ubuntu and Debian and other distributions, and is also the only one that I was able to find for an AMD card. This is what happens when you try to play it back. Play back one of the videos that I've done for YouTube. Now, watch what happens if I try to play that back without acceleration. So we turn that off. It works. It's actually usable. I can play back my own video. Now, here's the thing. I could probably Google and figure out proper accelerated graphics for my card if I wanted to. Or I could spend that time going to the gym. Or I could spend that time with people that I know. Or I could spend that time making video content for you. But that's free time. Do I want to spend time fucking around to make video drivers work in 2015? Or do I just use a solution where it works out of the box and use that free as in free time to do other things with my life? That's a freedom that I value. Now with my laptop, I got VA API to work with Intel HD 4400 after editing xorg.com files and enabling tear-free and all sorts of other silly crap. I finally got it to a point where it was usable. On here, I spent a good 20 minutes trying to make it usable. It never became usable. It only works on files that are so simple that the CPU itself could have decoded them just fine. And on any file where I actually begin using, 200, 300, or 400% CPU, if you use graphics accelerated decoding in 2015 on a $300 name brand AMD graphics card, it doesn't work. This also goes back to another thing that a lot of evangelists talk about when they talk about Linux and Unix and low system utilization, low resource utilization, how you can use it on older hardware. So if I take out a 5-year-old MacBook Pro with an 820-2850 motherboard, which is a piece of shit, with a 5-year-old NVIDIA chipset, that 5-year-old laptop NVIDIA chipset will be able to play that back with minimal CPU utilization. Whereas this is a half-year-old desktop with a 1-year-old graphics chip with a 6-core 3.8 GHz Haswell CPU, an R9 280X video chip. It uses almost all the CPU to play back that video. And if you try to use the graphics chip, which is so far ahead of that MacBook Pro laptop, it's not even funny, from 5 years ago, you see pixels. You don't even see something remotely resembling an image. So the 5-year-old hardware, that crappy 5-year-old hardware with closed source software works great. Whereas modern, expensive, high-end hardware with open source software, as you just saw, work like cock and balls. Now, let's go over to video editing. Because again, that's not a big deal. You can have a NVIDIA graphics card. You could use VDPAU, which just works out of the box and is very, very good, and it'll work just fine and dandy. But let's go over to video editing. It wasn't until very, very recently that using multiple cores in most video editors actually work. I'm not counting AVI Demux because that's barely a video editor. That's like a video cutter. You can't really do much with it. You can't have a lot of the things I do, you just can't do in AVI Demux. But with other video editors, just the basics of multi-core decoding of AVCHD, which is a format that most camcorders use, doesn't work. You can't. It doesn't matter if you have a 6-core and 8-core computer, when you hit play, it would go to 99% CPU, and you would see it skip and skip and skip because it didn't even have the ability to use more than 2 cores. We have had dual-core and quad-core consumer computers for, like 9 years now? Like 9 years that we have had this. And the video editor just caught up to this shit recently. And there are still effects that I occasionally use, where if I apply that effect, it will only render with 1 core. Now, again, freedom. Do I want my computer to sit here for 6 or 8 or 10 hours rendering a video, or do I want to render that video in 20 minutes and then use that other 8 or 9 or 10 hours to actually record videos or create content for the channel that you can benefit from? This is, again, free as in free time. I like having free time. That is a different kind of freedom besides free speech or free beer, and what a lot of evangelists don't realize is that there are a lot of people out there that value freedom. It's not that we don't value freedom, it's that we prioritize a different type of freedom than the type of freedom that you are talking about. So as of recently, the video editors that I've been using, as these projects have gotten longer and a little more complicated, just crash all the time out of nowhere. And when you combine that with the fact that I am using proxy clips just to play this stuff back, so just to be able to edit the video that I do on this very, very modern computer, I actually have to make proxy clips that are 640 by 360, 500 kilobit per second MPEG-2, which look like crap and suck to edit with, just to get this stuff done. And again, going back to lower resource utilization, since it uses less resources and is a more stable platform and all that good stuff, how you can use an older computer. Yes, that is, if you want to set up VSFTPD, that's true. If you want to set up a web server, that is absolutely positively true. If you want to use it as a video editor, again, I am actually better off using a 5 or a 6-year-old Apple laptop, seriously, than I am using a modern, top-of-the-line desktop that uses Linux if I want to do video editing. I will actually get not only a more user-friendly experience out of that Apple machine, but it will actually perform better even though the hardware itself is 5 or 6 years old, just because it makes use of the hardware. That dual-core CPU in there will actually have both cores used. The graphics chip will not be left out. If I were to touch the heat pipe on my graphics chip right now, it would actually be cold to the touch because this room is cool, and there's damn near nothing that I do with this computer that actually has the ability to turn on the graphics card. It's kind of sad. And recently, I've had these issues with video editors crashing once every 5 minutes, and the sad thing is not that the video editors available that are free crash every 5 or 10 minutes, and that they have these issues where some effects are not multi-core, where it won't even use multiple cores to decode a video, where I can't seek through a video without it going to 1200% CPU usage and having a memory leak that just sits there for 10 minutes until it finally seeks to a certain point in the video. The sad thing is that if I were to spend money, if I had $3,000 burning a hole in my pocket right now and I said, I'm going to buy a Linux video editor that does what I want, nobody is out there in 2015 actually provided. If I had $5,000 right now and I said, I want a Linux video editor that uses the graphics chip when I hit play to start playing the video and playing it back a little bit more smoothly instead of just killing the CPU, it doesn't exist. It's not there. I can't even pay for it, which is why on my video editing machine, I will be moving over to Windows, even though it costs money. It's not free as in free speech. I cannot view the source code, nor is it free as in free beer. I will pay for it, even though I come from a generation where piracy is open and accepted. I'm one of those, call me old-fashioned. I actually pay for software that I use if it helps me make money and it works. It's free as in free time. It's free time to create more videos. It's free time not going, God damn it, this thing crashed again, I have to restart it. It's free time that I get to spend doing anything other than troubleshooting things that don't work, and free time that I get when the computer is idle to be able to do other things. The point of this is you should never push your priorities onto other people. And especially if you're in a service business, especially if you're into IT in any way, shape, or form. I said in that other video that there are reasons that I don't use Apple products. And a lot of people got mad at a lot of the reasons that I give, and they say, well, not everybody is like you. And what they don't realize is that there are a lot of things about Apple products that are good. I do acknowledge these things, and what they don't realize is I actually recommend Apple products on a regular basis to people when they would be best served by an Apple product. And I'm not going to just say be one of those jackasses that says only idiots are best served by them. I only tell sheep to buy them. I tell a lot of people to buy them when I believe it will work for them, and a lot of these are intelligent people that simply need their device to do a specific thing. And I recommend these products when I feel they're going to be best. And in my personal life, I can honestly say, I'm going to use this product for one thing and this product for another. I'm not going to say, I like this product and its pros, therefore I am going to apply it to everything even when it doesn't work well, and I'm going to tell myself why it's great. You know, it reminds me of of these people on the Mac Rumors forum a few years ago. This is one of the biggest I told you so's, by the way. This is back in 2012, and people were going, the 2011 MacBook Pro, it runs really hot out of the box. It actually, the people pointing out that it throttles out of the box. That it actually throttles the CPU speed down when you're doing basic things. And when I say out of the box, I mean before it's had years to get dust and shit clogged in it. Because unlike Lenovo computers, where the fan is designed in a way where the dust doesn't get stuck in there, Apple computers are, at least the laptops and the iMacs, are pretty much designed to trap as much shit in there as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. When the MacBook Pro from 2011 is new out of the box, it throttles the CPU. And, you know, I said, yes, I know it does. That is a very, very hot GPU sharing a very small heatsink with a quad-core Sandy Bridge processor. This shit's gonna die. This is bad. That is, and I said this like 3 years ago. And you see all these people going, no, it's not. This is a great design. That's crap. And then you had, which I understand, that's just being a regular fanboy. Then you had the real hardcore idiots, the jackasses that were saying, well, it may throttle, but you guys are being silly using a laptop for video editing and all these professional applications. Don't you know what you're buying? Yes, I was buying the machine that on Apple.com showed me how much faster it is than the last generation at editing and rendering video. I am using it for the very application that they show it doing on their own website. No, don't turn around and say these people are not buying the right product for their application. Those types of fanboys, they're sad. They're defending. They like one thing about Apple products. And because they like that one thing about Apple products, they will ignore all the flaws and they will defend them religiously. And the problem here is that when you defend something religiously, you never give it the chance to get its ass kicked. And when something never gets its ass kicked, it never really learns how to do better. You know, like it's like trying to get better at a sport when you're always practicing but you never actually play somebody else. How is Apple going to know that this is a sad fucking way to design a laptop if over 20,000 people don't get mad and start filing class action lawsuits on it? They're not going to learn. The same way that, you know, if everybody just kind of embraces the fact that it's cool in 2015 that I can't use my graphics chip to play video, it's never going to get better. You need to realize that even if you like a certain thing about a product, that it can still have flaws and it can still be a good product. I think Linux is still a fine product, and I think there are many, many ways in which it can be applied and used where it makes sense. And I'm going to use it in my own personal life where it makes sense, just like I would use Apple products in my life where they made sense, just the same way I would use an Android product or a Microsoft product or a Lenovo product where they made sense. You can see that a product has pros and cons without saying, you know, because I like this product, I'm going to try to use it for everything. Because I like Linux for servers, I'm going to use it on my desktop, and I'm going to use it on my laptop, and I'm going to use it for video editing and gaming and blah, 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 because you're going to realize that you can't apply one product, in many cases, to everything. The same way that just because you like Apple products, you cannot defend the clusterfuck of a design that was the 2011 MacBook Pro. You can like that they're put together very nicely. You can like the culture. You can like the ecosystem. You can like the operating system. You can like the sleekness. But at the same time, don't like this quad-core Sandy Bridge processor tied to that graphics chip that's in this thin design with the small fans and the dust and the ugh. No, don't. That's bad. That's bullshit. That sucks. That's garbage. That's trash. The same way that while I love my Lenovo products, I love my laptop, I don't like the fact that I have a battery that bulges 2 inches out of the machine that still lasts for like 2 or 3 hours when, you know, you got all these other brands that are this thin and this tiny and you can't even see the damn battery and the shit lasts, you know, 10, 12 hours. Don't tell me that's acceptable. That's bullshit. I love Lenovo laptops. I love Lenovo durability. I love the TrackPoint interface. I love the durability. I hate their battery life. I think their battery life is atrocious shit, garbage. And I'll say it. And if you are somebody who values battery life in your laptop, I'm not going to tell you to buy a Lenovo T430. I'm not. And if you're somebody who values durability and that I can drop this thing and it's still going to work, I'm not going to tell you to buy a MacBook Pro. If you're somebody who uses your computer for basic web browsing and printing and you're somewhat savvy, I would say sure, try Ubuntu. If you're a video editor, no fucking way would I recommend you use this stuff. For half of the time you hit play, the whole application just crashes and doesn't autosave. You should use what is best for a given application. My priorities for freedom are free time, free beer, and then free speech. I don't care about the source code and free source code and all that because I can't code. There's not really, you know, I don't get much out of that. If I were a coder, I'm sure I would be like excited about being able to view the source code and being able to modify it and being able to see what's going on. I'm not, so it's a lower priority for me. And since I'm at a point in my life where spending $100 or $500 on a video editor is not going to kill me, the free as in free beer thing really doesn't matter as much as the free as in free time thing. I understand that to other people they have different priorities, and I totally respect your priorities. All I ask is that you learn to respect the priorities of others that may have a different set of priorities than you. They may have a different definition of freedom than you. And that's all this video is intended to get across.